Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Daily Ed Talk, where we engage in provoking discussions, all things education. I am here with some colleagues of mine who are educators, activists, I can say, that are working currently in the classroom in these different sectors or systems of education. So today's focus, we're talking about the different systems of education, whether it's private, public, or charter school system. What is the benefit of them? For parents and teachers, and of course, students. So I just want them to introduce themselves, tell us where they're teaching, what grade they're teaching really, and what they're doing right now, with this whole COVID virtual learning, how is it going? So we can start with Deanne.
Hello, everybody. I am Diane, and as you can see, I teach grade two. I've taught grade two for the past, 5 years, but teaching six altogether. Uh, Virtual learning has definitely been an adjustment. Fortunately, we were able to go back to school and have in-person contact. So that was definitely a stress off, but within teaching, in-person teaching, that creates a different level of stress. So just finding ways to manage and move forward.
And she's teaching in a private school.
Private K to 12, yes.
Private K to 12, great. All right.
Pre-K to
Oh, pre-K to 12.
pre-K to 12.
All right, hey Sabrina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sabrina Webb. I am teaching grades K to 2. I'm also in the private school system. This is my 8th year teaching. And I started off teaching pre-K and K for 2 years, and the last few years I was doing first to fourth. Now I'm back to K to 2. So with the virtual teaching, it's definitely been very challenging, but making those adjustments and trying to make it fun and interesting and making sure my students are learning every day is definitely the goal of mine.
All right, Angie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angela. I've been teaching. I never introduced myself as Angie. Did you know that?
Oh, I didn't.
But it's okay.
Okay,
It's
sorry.
so this is my 13th year of teaching, and I've taught first grade all 13 years. So I really like it. I've been in public school all 13 years, a magnet school for the first 10 years, and this is my third year at a general public school. And I really enjoy the challenge each year. I mean, there's something new each year that I learn from or take something from. So I've been virtual since March, have not gone back to the classroom yet. I was able to choose to stay virtual this year. My school has given parents the option to go face to face, but I have stayed with the parents that have chosen to stay virtual. And so, yeah, it's been a huge challenge with first graders, having to take on some sort of responsibility for their learning, but also relying on parents to really guide them. When we usually like to have that control of their guidance to guide them into their responsibilities and accountability. So it's been a challenge, but I really enjoy. I'm blessed to stay virtual as long as possible. And yeah, I really love it.
Thanks, Lavelle.
What's going on? What's going on? It's My name's Lavelle Russell. I teach at a charter school in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been teaching for about 5 years now. I started in an alternative school dealing with students with social and emotional behaviors in Boston, Massachusetts, and then I transitioned to, Atlanta, Georgia. So I just been, more so transitioned from the charter, it's not charter, but the alternative school to the charter school. And our core values are all about pretty much Ubuntu. We live off of the African, I guess, like language, and I love the Ubuntu's because it's saying that it kind of encompasses like the importance of teaching. It's saying that if you're not good, I'm not good. So it's just giving them that holistic approach, and especially in this virtual learning, it's very, very necessary because we, as educators, we know that we're dealing with a lot of situations, whether it be social, emotional. We're not only their educators, but we're their parents, we're their guidance counselors. So that term, I feel that it's very, very necessary in this virtual learning space. As far as when we're going back, we're in talks of going back in like February, but we really don't know. They've been sending surveys and things like that, and really trying to figure out, what are the educators feeling in regards to this, like going back to that not social emotional, but going back into the classroom, because we know Atlanta is the hub of yeah, we ain't gonna talk about that. You know what I'm saying? It's the hub of they don't really, care about, social distancing and wearing that mask. So it's just very, it's kind of like a catch-22. It's kind of like, you don't want to go back into the classroom, but then when you hear recently one of our alumni scholars, they died by a drive-by shooting. And I teach in the middle school, 7th grade. So I guess they went into the 8th grade in that not 8th grade, but like the high school realm. And you had like the drive-by shootings. You have it like, they're talking about the AJC, talk about the article in regards of like, snitching is not, a bad thing, like expressing or telling like, who are these people that are killing these people. So it's very tough, because students are dealing with a lot of situations. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, so I'm not gonna talk that much.
No, that's great. That's great. Because each sector of schooling, public, private, or charter, they all have its benefits. They all have its main goal, and I guess you want to say their emphasis, their aim, their motto, what they believe in. So I want to start off with just talking about, is this where you wanted to be when you graduated and you decided, or when you decided to become a teacher and educator? Did you say, I'm going to go into the public school system because of this? I'm going to go into the private school system because of this, or charter? Like, why did you make that decision for the school system that you're currently in?
Starting with me.
Anyone.
Oh, I'm gonna let the these beautiful Black women go first. I'm gonna step back. You know what I'm saying?
I'll start. I felt passionate about going into public school. I was K through 12 public school educated, and I felt that it was a great benefit for me. I felt like I had to really learn who I was, and how I stood out from everyone else, um, based on, I mostly went to majority white schools. So I had to learn my identity based on what I thought I would be, not what someone else would teach me or tell me. So um, I felt like I could contribute more to a public school environment. And for a student that might be like me, looking for someone professional of the same color, and you didn't really see many Black professionals in those kinds of schools, I wanted to contribute to a school where a child was looking for someone like them. So um, there were opportunities for private schools, but the Lord blessed me to be in a schooling environment that I desired, and so I really am glad that I've been able to do that. And in these last few years where it's been difficult as a Black person, and you're surrounded by mostly white people who don't quite get what's going on, or why things are so stressful and disheartening. I've been happy with the encouragement and comments that I've gotten from other white colleagues, saying how I am important, and asking me for guidance on how they can speak better to their students that are not white. And I'm glad that I can be someone that's a resource in those kind of fields. So that's what I wanted, and that's where I am.
Yeah, I felt a little bit of the shade with the private, but we'll get back to
No.
that. We'll get back to just a little bit of shade in the public over private, but we'll get back to that one.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go. I don't think that I really had a specific preference. I know like right after school, right after I graduated, I was just like, I need a job, right? And I wasn't quite ready to move back home. But once I moved home, I did want to go to public school because similar to Angie, I did most of my schooling in public school from primary school to middle school. And then for high school, I went to a private school. And, I see a benefit for both. And my choice to be where I am was kind of because I was at both places. Like I wanted to teach in public school because I wanted to go to the primary school that I went to. I loved it. And I was just like, it'd be so great to work there and just be in the same environment that made me want to be a teacher because P3, which is grade 2 equivalent, that's when I decided it's like, I gotta be a teacher. My second grade teacher was just so great. And I was like, I want to be her. So it's like, if I get to go back to that place and start, and then in that same time, I had the same thing about the private school that I'm at. Like, it gave me great tools that I wouldn't have gotten in public school because of the kind of private school it is. But I felt my presence there would make an impact because I was younger. I had some things to offer as far as new practices, new ways, just open to what's new. And I was, hoping that me being there, I could encourage other people to, move to a more modern version of doing things. And I have in some aspects, like working is like the only place where you would have a best friend at school that's like 20 years older than you. And like, that's your person at school, right? And so I have one of those relationships, and I do know that I have been able to help her out and make things easier. And, we work together where we can. And people always say, like, if they want her to do something, they'll come to me and say, hey, can you encourage her to do this, especially with new technologies and programs, because that's not their immediate go-to, they're more of an old school type teaching. So I did choose to be her. But like I said, I had multiple places. Like I could go here and do this, I could go here and do this. And when the opportunity presented itself to be where I am, I said, well, must be where I need to be, at least for now.
All right, well, I'll go next. Initially, after leading up to graduation, I planned on working in a public school. Well, why? I attended public school for my last 2 years of high school, but leading up to that, I was in a private school. So I don't know honestly where that came from, but I know I felt like, especially in Chicago, if I went back to Chicago, which I did, I felt like they needed really good teachers, and especially in the public school spectrum. So that's what I wanted to do. However, I did feel that God was calling me to the Adventist school system. And so I ended up teaching my first 7 years. I ended up teaching at my alma mater. And it was a wonderful experience. I was able to give back and, provide opportunities that I had, and even things that I wasn't, the opportunities I wasn't allowed to have, not allowed, but they weren't available. So I was able to offer those activities and things for the students as well. But yeah, I did choose to be in the Adventist system. I did have a choice from different options of schools, but I think I believe that's where God called me to. And in my 8th year now at a new place, I guess it's just stuck with me. Being able to teach my children about God and, openly, not having to worry about the backlash of all of that has definitely been a high point for me.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with me, the reason why I decided to go into education, it started when I finished my my bachelor's in social work at Oakwood University. Enter to learn, depart to serve. I'm just saying. Hey, come on now. But yeah, when I got in contact with Ariane Mills, he was a psychology major, social work major, so we were always going back and forth in regards of my field being agents of change and his field being about like in regards to like the whole clinical aspect. And we always used to make jokes about, which, program is better. But when I went to this program with DECO, it was a program that pretty much where I was able and blessed to be a residential counselor. So going there and being that residential counselor and working with, Black, brown, as well as, white, I would guess say, what's the word that I would like to use? Just children that are dealing with a lot of baggage, a lot of baggage. While working there, I was like, we had to, wake them up, living in the cabin together. So seeing like, not only, oftentimes like mental health issues, it's like, okay, this is what mental health issues look like, or, children that deal with mental health issues look like this. And like, while working there and seeing like these kids, how I had to like, rub their back in order to go to sleep, how you had like scars on their back in regards of like the abuse that they were going through. I started to recognize like, wow, like this is bigger than like, what, you see on social media or what you see on the Breakfast Club, things like that. So going into the classroom, I recognized that one, there aren't any educators that look like them. So oftentimes they feel representation matters. So when they see these educators or when you see these teachers, they're like, okay, how can I be successful? And on the other hand, they oftentimes have this type of mentality as if like, I'm going to, give them this sob story to just get pushed over because they're going to believe me because, woe is me, look what I go through. I come from a single parent household. You don't know what I go through and things like that. So while staying in that classroom and like, oftentimes like taking over the classroom and the teacher that was there, they're like, man, Mr. Russell, like you're a very good educator. And I'm just like, wow, like maybe I should do this, and then going to the Boston BPS and seeing like how, looking at the data, 2% of educators are Black males, and seeing that, when you go into that classroom and being transparent when I teach and letting them know where I come from, a single parent household, and all these things. And I'm transparent with a purpose because I want them to know if I can make it, you can. I hold you to a certain bar because at the end of the day, when you leave this like, classroom or when you leave this school, they don't really care about what you have been through. They don't really care about, I didn't wake up today and or all these other things. Because a lot of people are dealing with a lot of issues that a lot of people don't know about. So, just being in that space is the reason why I decided to be an educator, because I wanted to show them representation. I wanted to show them transparency. And then I want them to show them like, you have to be at a certain level. And I'm going to put you at that certain level because I know that you can like, succeed. And then like just going into that education, I start recognizing that oftentimes being that Black male in that school system, especially being in Boston now teaching in Atlanta is totally different. Everybody's Black, you know what I'm saying? But in Boston, you know what I'm saying? Oftentimes the Black educators are the Black male educators oftentimes are the deans or the, what are the janitors? You don't really have principals. You don't really have, educators as like, their teachers. So I say that to say like, when I'm in that space, oftentimes, if Terrell or if David or whomever is having the issues, let's take them to Mr. Russell. So there's just like this barrier or this like, this boulder on my shoulders that I have to carry, so there's some pros and cons in regards of being, that educator. And I started to recognize that. So that's the reason why I decided to be that educator, go into education, is to move away from social work and say like, let me affect this. Let me call and say, okay, are you good? And bringing that social work, energy into that, being that agent of change, are you good? What resources do you need? Okay, do you need this or do you need that? And parents and guardians have started to like, wow, you're a lot different than, other educators that I've been in contact with. So, that is my why.
Yeah, and to segue from that, it allows me to think back too on my education, being that I went to a private school K through 8 and then public school 9 through 12. And in both of those arenas, I can say, I was not able to, and I say this on the past episodes, if you haven't seen it, go catch up on the black male conversation, that I didn't have a black male until I got to Oakwood. I didn't have a
Right.
primary black male teacher till I got to Oakwood, which was astonishing at that. But
It is.
being that you're in a charter school, I believe, and we can talk deeper about this too, being in a charter school, I believe you have a greater impact than in a public or private school. And I say that to an extent of, I currently teach in a private school, but because I'm in a denominational private school, you're put in a box. And I'll say you're put in a box where you have to do this. And if it doesn't benefit the client, which is to me the parent first, then the student, then let's not do it. And that's why when I did this internship with the UNCF through the Walton K-12 Fellowship, I was in love with charter schools. Like, I loved it. I came back like, oh, I'm about to start my own charter school, get all these investment people, and then they fit my motto, my aim. But then I'm looking how it's kind of changing. It is now, to me, like another public school system. So what I'm saying is, I love the system that charter schools have, but why is it that private schools can't operate like that? Why is it that public schools can't operate like that? Why is it isolated to, I have to do it only in my classroom? Why can't everyone at Angie School have that same mindset of, I need to leave an impact on the students? I'm not here to teach. I'm honestly not here to teach parents. I'm here to teach students, make an impact on the student
That part.
but you can do that to me in a charter school. You can't really do that in the realm of a private or public school. And we can talk about
it's charter school. Yeah, like charter schools are, I don't mean to interrupt anybody, and you guys can go after, but I really love this space. Like Darren said, like this is a very good space, especially the videos that I've seen, because it's like very transparency and it's very, educators get that opportunity to like really, speak, on how they feel. But with charter schools, to me, like, yes, there's some good and bad, but there's that data driven, like they're big about data. Like if your data is not at a certain level, you have to do that. Like, and sometimes, like, charter schools oftentimes get this pushback of like saying like, oh, it's very robotic. Like you have to look a certain way, you have to act a certain way, you have to walk in a certain line or things like that. And there's been a lot of pushback in regards of like charter schools. And I think like the biggest thing with charter schools, you have that funding. And with public schools, you don't really have that funding. If you guys have the opportunity to, I think that you guys should watch this documentary off of Vice in regards to charter schools and how charter schools are taking funding away from public schools. So like, a lot of public schools are not getting the funding that they need to, because when you look at the data for charter schools, you see this high data. But then oftentimes they don't really talk about how in certain charter schools is that, like in my charter school, it's oftentimes looked at as like the stepchild. So we don't get the certain type of funding that, the other charter schools get and things like that, because of, our scholars and the scholars that we have and what they bring to the table. And there's always been this kind of like Superman complex in regards of educators. Like, oh, I'm going to get out of Teach for America and I'm going to be the best teacher ever. I'm going to go into this classroom and teach these Black kids because I love these Black kids. I seen Angelina Jolie and, I want to do the best that I can. And then when they get in there and understanding that our population, especially the African-American population, they want to see how much you truly care, because the people that have been in their lives, whether it be their father, their mother, their grandmother, they said, I love you. And all of a sudden they're out, the following week. So they're going to push you. And that boundary, that homeostasis, that social return in regards of like, okay, like if you say that you love me, all right, I'm going to curse you out. I'm going to, after I curse you out, I'm going to do all these things that pretty much I know that get on your nerves. Because you say that you love me, but do you truly love me? Do you really know what that means? Because if you truly love me, there shouldn't be something in regards of one day I have this Black teacher, and then the next day he's not here anymore. So it's just really like in regards of like charter schools, it's like pros and cons. But I think that the con that I see is like it's very data driven. It's very like kind of like, oh, all these things. So it gets to the virtual learning. You have these educators are getting like kind of like nervous because it's like, how can I give you data in regards to something when scholars don't turn on their camera, when I don't know if they're learning this thing. So charter schools have they're good, but then it's like, man, like they have a lot of work to do, because they think that, oh, we are diverse, but you only got what, like one white girl in the school, like, so, so.
I think for at least from my perspective, why we can't move in a direction to be more student-centered is because the people that are making the decisions about how we should teach, the people that are telling us about what we should do are so outdated. And anytime you try to say, hey, so I do this in my classroom, I think this works. How about we all try this? Well, we'll make a committee and we'll talk about it. Bring I don't even know what the word is I'm looking for, but there's all these hoops to jump through to try and change something, because I feel like to some point they forgot why they went into education at all, right? Like I've seen the switch up. I've seen it go from you're the teacher and now you're the principal, and you don't know how to relate to the teachers now, or just even going in. I've seen people go in all zesty and ready, like, oh, I'm gonna be the change, to meet an obstacle, and it just squashes the spirit. So they don't want to try anything new anymore, So we can't move to that place if everyone doesn't have a forward thinking mindset. And one of the main things, and in the last video that you did, one of the gentlemen said, something along these lines, like, millennials are not just going to stay around because we want a job. We're going to go where we feel valued. And that's also a part of the problem. So many millennials are dropping off and dropping out of education because they can see what they want to do and no one wants to jump on board to say, let's help you make this happen. And so it's just like, why stress about something that I clearly cannot change, but I know I could change my environment and I could leave, and then we're where we are. We can't go forward because no one wants to help us move forward. Everyone wants to, no, that's not true. Everyone wants to move forward, but if it's not their way, it can't happen.
Well, I think the push and pull between giving teachers, all right, this is your large box, try to fit in it, as opposed to, all right, this is your small box, get some great data now. I think it goes back to what we were talking about, why we went into education. Anybody that really went into education for the passion of seeing lives being changed and growth and all that kind of stuff knows, well, what I did for Sarah is not going to work for Lonnie. Or, back in 2014, I had a group of kids where, this amount of small group and whole group and all that worked. And then I had to change that for 2015 because I had a whole different set of kids. I think anybody that has made that kind of commitment to teaching, and once they do make it up into administration, they understand I can't make these teachers commit to this one style. I've got to give them that freedom. Any supervisor that I've had, any principal that I've worked with that really understood education has said, keep the main thing the main thing. And so they're not telling me, okay, you didn't get your 90 minutes of whole group in this week. I mean, you're really falling behind. No, they're telling me, did you do what was best for your class this week? Did you, when I've been evaluated, I saw that you really made sure you tailored that lesson to students that needed to hear something about, I don't know, commas or what, I think the people that are making those decisions for us about what we're supposed to be doing, are not remembering the reason they went into education, or the reason why we're here as educators. So I think that's the biggest problem. What are you making these decisions for? Are you making them for, I don't know what they're making certain decisions for, but I think that it goes back to funding, like you said. I think a big deal in private education, where whether it's Christian or not, the people that are paying are the ones that have the biggest say so. Same with charter. I haven't always understood how the funding works for different um, uh, socioeconomic schools as far as charter schools are concerned, but I feel like that's another way that a lot of decisions may be made. Same for public, taxpayers. They are, our biggest clients, like you say. But again, the people they vote in are the ones that have the biggest say. And, it doesn't always work as what's best for Johnny, who's walking in my class every day.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's also sometimes like a sink or swim mentality. So these are the expectations you're supposed to, this is what I need you to do. And just kind of push you in the water and see if, if you're swimming, then you're good, keep
Right.
going. But if you're drowning, you're like, hey, I need help. And they're like, these are the expectations and you're not doing them. You're in trouble. And it's just like, okay, well, we need this extra help. Where is this help coming from? Yeah, that's been my experience sometimes in seeing it. And, luckily, most of the times I can swim, but sometimes, and then even with like boards, you have people who have never educated a child in their life. And they have all these opinions and all these great things, great ideas of what you should be doing or how you should be doing it, but they don't have that background. And so sometimes I say, well, hey, if you think it should be this way, or you want to come, or you think I should be doing this activity, you're more than welcome to come into the class, take 30 minutes and do this. And then when you say that, they freeze up like, wait, this is what you're supposed to do, not me. So yeah, I think that's something that definitely needs to change as well.
So I'm gonna challenge you, or challenge you all in this next question. Thinking about all three, and I guess I can explain, but I do explain it in the video that comes out before this. The whole funding aspect of charter schools, of course, they get private funding and public funding, so taxpayer dollars and corporations. And that's another reason why they're so data driven, because if Microsoft donates $1 million to the charter school sector, they're coming with some stipulations, like you need to have this test score for technology, or reading literacy needs to be on this level. So that's why, another reason why they're so data driven. But if you look at the schools that you're at and what you know about the different schools, do you feel like your school, whether it's private, public, or charter, is the best school for students? Is it the best school for the demographic or the generation that we're teaching right now? My personal research, and hopefully I get into a program soon, but my research right now is really focusing on this Generation Y, Generation Alpha, and understanding who they are and how we, as millennials or Generation X and baby boomers who are still teaching, how they're impacting these generations, and if what we're doing is still, impactful for them. But do you think your private school or your public school, your charter school, is the best system for this generation that we're teaching? And you can say yes, you can definitely say no.
I will say I haven't always felt like the school I was at was the best, but I feel like there's no perfect school. Um, Whatever type of schooling it is. But I really feel like my school does a great job with making sure we're meeting the child's needs. I feel like we are always encouraged to just scrap whatever is not working and try to fit what actually does work for that particular student. We have meetings upon meetings upon meetings to look at data and to have a committee set for how can we Spire and RTI and all those kinds of things. But at the end of that meeting, we're like, wait, did everything we just discussed really hit what that child is really needing? Have we looked at their home life and their, their age, their size, their all those kinds of things? Have we looked at all the factors that may contribute to this child's success? And this is my third year, but I feel really happy about the way my leadership has allowed for that space. It's not easy. We've had very great data since I've been there, but I think it's important that the leadership really keeps that in an educator's mind, because you can get bogged down by all the data meetings, that heart palpitation you have when it's time for a data meeting. You can really get bogged down by that being the biggest important thing. But I think if leadership reminds you that meeting the child where they are is what we're really here for. I think that school is a successful school, whether the score says so or not. But yeah, I feel like I am at a great school for children.
Um,
Come on, just speak the truth. Speak that truth. Let it be known.
I think that it's great in some aspects, but overall, no. And I say that because we accept students that we can't adequately help and serve, and that is not fair to the child, to the parents. Now, there were some parents who are very insistent that they want their child at the school, and knowing that we don't have certain things or certain programs and whatever. And I think because it is an Adventist school, people kind of have the mindset that, well, you have to take them. And if we say, no, we don't want to accept your child, even if the reasons are outlined and justifiable, it's seen as like, well, you're not Christian. And I think that maybe we have gotten stuck in that for fear of being called anti-Christian or what have you, that we'll just take and hope for the best. And that's not everybody, that's not everybody. I think those who don't have specific needs that need to be met in order for them to be successful, they'll be fine. But as time goes on, more and more children require specific services. And while we have good intentions and we'll do our best, if we're not equipped, we're not doing it right.
It's real. I'll just piggyback. I was at a magnet school, and the way you were accepted into that school was from your kindergarten test scores. It was called the COGAT test. And so all kindergartners in the city took that test, and we took the top 10%. But they also had an evaluation from that teacher as well that mattered. And a lot of times we would magically get students that totally failed that COGAT, but those evaluations were stellar. And we realized they were a behavior problem and they needed to get that child out of the school. And so with those situations, you still accept, hey, you need to be here for some kind of reason. And I really loved those kids. I felt like, meeting them where they were was important, but also saying, okay, well, this is the card we've been dealt. Let's hit the ground. But yes, we didn't have special ed services. We didn't have behavioral services for those children. But again, we accepted all siblings. So if your sibling got in 5 years ago, you're automatically in. So yeah, there are certain things like you got to make sure you're tailoring what you, even if you don't have the services, find some kind of ways to pull resources from the community and stakeholders to meet these kids. But not every school can do that. So
the amount of things that I've had to do
Yeah, yeah,
just because of what I have in my class.
yeah,
You know, and that's just because I care, you
yeah.
know, and like somebody else talk. I'm
I
getting emotional, but somebody else talk.
I completely echo Deanna's sentiments. I am in a multi-grade system. So I am teaching, last year I was teaching 4 grades at the same time, right? So, and then adding on to having learners at different levels, and then having those who have that deficit in each grade,
Listen,
it is absolutely like, okay, so for the kids who catch on quickly and they advance, like having a multi-grade system is great because they can be doing their work in over here 4th grade stuff and they're learning all of that. But those who are so behind, and it's like you have to balance out that time, like teaching all of these things at one time, and you have this amount of time to do it. It's beyond challenging. And I've had students who were in, I said, I talked to the parents, you know, hey, maybe you should get them tested because I'm not going to self-diagnose any kid, but, you know, and then refusing to do so and then having them go through the system. And then I'm like, I can't. So yeah, it really put me in a hard place. But I will say if we took certain components, like if we took something from the public school, something from the charter school, something from the private school and put them all together, then I think then you can have a great cohesive school. But I will say there's definitely perks to the Adventist system, but do I think it's the best overall, hands down, like it's everything great? No. There's definitely room for growth, a lot of growth.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
listen.
Rattling some chairs, some tables.
I honestly believe that my charter school really truly does a great job at just understanding the students. The model that I believe my school lives by is students don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. Like there's social media in regards to food drives, like if you need food, if you need whatever you need, laptops, computers, like that's I've seen people, especially on my cohort, that my lead, she brought her, she had like an extra, what is it? Not a MacBook, but an iPad that was she wasn't using. She said, "All right, since you don't have Wi-Fi, here you go." Like the social worker does a very, very phenomenal job. And what I love the most, especially being a social studies teacher, I love that they made sure that we are teaching Black history. They made sure that said like, okay, this is what these kids are going through. We're not going to teach them just history about like just hit on specifics about African like slavery or Black history. We're going to dive deep into like how are the pyramids made? We're going to be talking about Mansa Musa. Like we're going to be talking about just various things like what is identity? What is racism? Things like that. So I honestly believe that my charter school does a phenomenal job in regards of like really teaching the students. I don't know if down south that they talk about this, but up north, especially Boston, they talked about closing that achievement gap. And while teaching at another public school, the principal, a Black woman, like phenomenal, she said, let's stop talking about the achievement gap. Let's talk about this opportunity gap. Like what opportunities do these scholars have that these other scholars that don't? What is the opportunity that these scholars that live in Dorchester have versus the students that, or excuse me, the ones that live in like downtown, like Brighton versus the ones that are in Dorchester. So let's talk about these opportunities. So I believe that, if there is, especially in this not social, but this virtual learning, there's times where not only the educators, not educators, but the administration, my assistant principal that is a Black male, as well as my principal that's a Black male, they come in and not just more so kind of like, okay, what are you doing wrong? What is it that you're doing right? They come in and they just watch, they observe, and they build that relationship. So when I believe when you're given that constructive criticism, you have that relationship. And I believe like, especially what I've seen in other schools is that like, where is that relationship? Like, are you sitting at that threshold when your scholars are coming in? Like, do you know your scholar's name? Like, I know one person, my fiance, she knows every scholar's middle name. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so just things like that. And the students, that are running up the walls in other classes. When they go into her classroom, they're just chill and calm. So just like, I ask myself, like, are we gaining that relationship? Are we building that relationship? Like, data is one thing, but if we don't have that relationship, if we are not trying to figure out we can close that opportunity gap, if we don't have content, yes, that content is talking about science, but how can we relate it to that child that it's like they have to fend for their household? The reason why they sell drugs is because they don't have any food in the household. So how will you relate science to like what he's dealing with? Because they don't want to hear like, oh, this is what, Pythagorean theorem or, homeostasis and all this other stuff. It's like, okay, how can I really truly understand? Because if we see what's going on in society now, social media is booming. You don't have to go to school. What is it? Like they have all these examples of people that dropped out of college that, made it, or millionaires. They have like, your sports, your musicians, and things like that. You have these Black women that are on Time magazine that haven't finished college. You know what I'm saying? And I know that society or the artists might say, oh, go to college, go do this or do that. But then all of a sudden when they listen to a rap, it's like, are you speaking the same thing? Is it like relatable? So just like my biggest thing is that I believe that my charter school does a phenomenal job for the simple fact that there is not only a social studies content, but there is Black history that we're being taught, and being taught by an educator that's Black. This is very huge, to them. So it's just, I think that we do a good job, but I'm sorry for everybody else.
No, it's not a sorry thing. It's not an apology thing. I think it's more of, to be honest, speaking the truth, like you're saying, putting it more out there to parents. And when it's time to select a school, it's not to select a school because it fits, your religion or it's probably in the vicinity that you live. You might have to relocate because if the only option you have is public school and you're looking at that public school and you're saying, well, it's not going to benefit my child. I can walk in, you go on the school tour and you walk in there and you're like, well, there's no Black teachers here. Like you might have to relocate if that's, your option, or try a charter school that you can get into, test into, and it benefits them. And I think that's one main goal that I'm learning teaching in a private school is, just like Deanna said, we don't have all the resources because we are tuition based. We don't have those big, large government funds that can provide these resources. So of course the parent is the client, and I get it. But as the parent, they have to realize too, this is what we can do, this is what we're able to do. And let's see if this school benefits you. And I think that's one main reason I want to have this conversation, is to let people know there is a power of school choice. There are these different systems of schooling and how it can benefit your child. And I think the main word, and we all do it because I can hear it in your conversation, is making sure we teach for the student. Everything, like Deanna is saying, student centered. And I can see that in charter schools, I can see it in public schools, and of course I can see it in private schools. And there's pros and cons to everything. So I appreciate this conversation that we've had today.